Good afternoon. How's everyone doing at the moment? Okay. Hopefully after that little post-lunch dip, hopefully you've all got some coffee, a bit of caffeine. My name is Paul Gledhill. So I'm a lead engineer at Lloyds Banking Group, working on serverless technologies. I'm also the organizer of the Liverpool AWS user group. So if you're anywhere near Liverpool, check us out on Meetup. Come along to the sessions. They tend to be nice little sessions where we can get to have a bit of a discussion and talk about some topics. So please come along to those. Today, I'm guessing that you've gone to sessions that are talking about, like big enterprise type stuff, millions of transactions a minute, huge systems. You've been talking about containers and Kubernetes and serverless. This talk's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to take you on a little story, a little adventure. So I'm going to talk about shooting, and I'm going to talk about driving, and I'm going to talk about baking and hiking. There's a bit of sleuthing. So there's a little whodunit near the end that I'm looking forward to. Let's see if anyone can actually work out who did it. And in there, I'm going to weave a bit of automation, cost optimization, and talk about security. So hopefully a little bit of something in there for everyone today. Okay. As we're saying, I'm not going to be talking about big things. I'm going to be talking about a hobby project. And before I get too much into the actual hobby project itself, I just want to talk about hobby projects in general. I think they're really, really important. I think it's a great way to learn. I think it's a great way to try things out. Maybe it's a language you've not done. Maybe you've never tried Python, you've always been a .NET developer, maybe you want to try it out, maybe it's frameworks, methodologies. Those kind of things you just might not get the opportunity to do at work, or you might not feel that you can justify spending the time at work, so it's sometimes nice to have a little bit of a play around with things. One of my kind of hints and tips around hobby projects, do something that you enjoy and you're interested in. Try and weave a bit of that, I want to play around with this technology, in with something that actually kind of makes sense, automate your car, I don't know, do something interesting with home automation, or, there was a talk that moved, and I don't know if she's in here, but there was a talk earlier about, kind of playing around with AWS, I think it's the lady there in the middle, and I was really gutted to miss your talk, because I think it's really, really important to have these things that we play around with and try. Hints and tips, yes, enjoy. Don't wait too long, dive in, do. You can always press the delete button, get rid of it. You don't have to actually understand how you're going to get to the end. You can make a start, and then you can try things, and you can throw them away. So just try and get that level of, rigor around what you're doing to the right level, so that you're still progressing and still being able to build things quick enough that you can, not wasting every single weekend. Okay. Some cautionary tales around hobby projects as well, particularly with the cloud, some things around costs, some things around security. I'll kind of touch on them later. So, gaming with friends. I'm a bit of a geek, and like playing computer games, with my friends, and for about 2 decades, my friend has been running kind of LAN parties out of his basement once or twice a year. So that's a whole group of us kind of descend on his house for a couple of nights, all bring our computers. Much easier now that we've got kind of LCD monitors rather than the old school CRTs, but we still used to lug those down the kind of the steps in his cellar. And we kind of go and we play computer games all weekend, and we all have a really good fun. Really, really enjoy it. Awesome. In terms of the kind of games we play, I'm going to touch on 2 games today. So the first one is, this isn't the Lambda symbol, by the way. This has got nothing to do with AWS. This is Half-Life, and so this is a game that again is 25 years old. And out of the engine of Half-Life came Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike is a counter-terrorism kind of game, first-person shooter, and you're either defusing bombs or trying to plant bombs, or you're going and you're trying to rescue some hostages. Over the years, it's kind of come on from a graphics point of view. So it started out relatively basic, and then as time's gone on, the engine's kind of improved. They've maybe had a little bit of shadows in there. They've had a bit more lighting, they've played around with little things. So, and this is how it was at 5 minutes to 6 yesterday. And then at 6 o'clock yesterday, Counter-Strike 2 came out. So it's the first iteration for, I don't know, it's about 8 or 9 years since Counter-Strike Global Offensive came out. And so, yes, they've added a lot more. I haven't been able to play it yet, because I was preparing for this talk last night. Yes, so Counter-Strike. The other game that we play a lot of is a game called Assetto Corsa. Really customizable, really engaging kind of driving game. So, here we are, all having fun. And although we could play on one of those online servers, we're not the best. So actually, we much prefer to play on, a bit of a local server. We can customize it. We can kind of lock everybody else out. And we can kind of play together. And so we use Game Server. And Game Server is, if you've heard of the pets and cattle analogy, when it comes to servers, Game Server is a pet. This is something that we've treasured over 20 years. We've patched it. There's been certain upgrades done to it. It's one of those things where there's not a single component that was there 20 years ago. But it's still the same. It's still the same server because we've just kept replacing various bits of it. Probably over 10 people have installed and configured and changed and tweaked things on this server. We have absolutely no idea how it was built. But there, it kind of works, right? So I've set the scene. Like playing games, group of friends. Those are the 2 games we're going to be talking about. Okay. COVID. So 3 years ago, COVID kicked in. Yeah, not great. And so what you got people all over the country that would have been coming to my friends' LAN parties that have all sat home, bored. They've got a lot of time on their hands. They'd really like to be playing games. They'd really like to talk to their friends. But yeah, they've got time. So, friend Bob spun up a game server, configured it, added some firewall rules in there, did all of the port forwarding type stuff. Everyone's quite excited. Friday night, we all jump on. Bob's happy with the server. Not a lot of the others of that, because, to be honest, is a little bit tight, is my friend Bob. And his internet connection isn't the best. He's not on a 56K modem, but it doesn't feel like he's on much more than that. So it really, really didn't work. And so really, this is where I kind of chirped up. And at the time I said, I'm doing some AWS certs. I don't get the chance to play around with all of these services at work. I'm going to spin a server up. Let's try it. Let's do it. And I know we could have used some kind of SaaS provider online. I could have paid them £20, £30 a month to host a CSGO server for us. But, I'm a geek and I want to play with these things. Hobby projects. You don't do them because they're saving you money most of the time. You do them because you want to play around with things. So, over to the AWS console, span up an EC2, not a huge amount to it, 80 gig hard disk space, open up some ports. Counter-Strike's pretty simple, it only uses a couple of ports, one TCP, UDP ports. And then did the installs, so SSH onto the server. It's quite old, so it needs a lot of the kind of x86 kind of libraries, so we need to add in the kind of x86 support into the 64-bit machine that I'm using. Did some updates, installed Steam CMD. So this is kind of their command line utility for installing any of the games that run in as part of the Steam platform. Did an install of the server. It takes a while. I don't know, about 50, 60, 70 gig of kind of data coming down over the network, and then ran the bottom command to actually spin up the dedicated server and get it running. So, Friday night, everyone's there, a little bit nervous. Is it going to work? I'm a little bit more nervous than most. And it works. Brilliant. Low ping, everyone can connect, working fine. Awesome. End of talk. Well, it was fine. It's fine for a few weeks. But actually, I then start getting a little bit tired because they keep asking me to add these add-ons on, and the add-ons don't install very well, so you then have to restart, rebuild the server. So I'm going back onto the portal and I'm going through all of the steps again, and it just becomes a bit of a drag. So obviously, infrastructure's code. So let's take all of those manual steps that I was doing, and let's try and convert it into something that's a little bit more automated. So as I was saying earlier, you moan about all of these things you have to do at work, and then you're doing some projects on your own, and then you're like, well, actually, yeah, maybe that is a good idea. So I took all of the infrastructure kind of things, the spinning up the server, the IAM roles to do the security, the SSH groups to do the kind of firewall groups, got all of those into CloudFormation. And the nice thing about this is then you can put it in source control, so in the future, if one of the lads wants to change something, I'll be able to see what they've done, potentially roll it back. Okay, so that's the infrastructure stuff, but then what do you do with the actual installer scripts, the SSH terminal? So with EC2 instances, yes, when you're spinning one up, you can specify user data. So with user data, when the server spins up for the first time, it's going to go through the commands that you put in the user data section. Okay, but for me, it just didn't feel right. I don't know, there's quite a lot of that I think, with technology. When you're doing things, certain technologies kind of feels like they work better in certain places than others. So I really wanted to separate out what I'd see as almost like the software elements and the infrastructure-y elements, okay? And so one of the ways that I wanted to do that was actually, I think I've missed something there. Anyway, I might come back to it. So how I want to do this, I guess, is in two parts. One is that install took an age, 45, 50, 60 minutes, okay? It's quite a long time to wait. So I want to do a thing that's known as kind of baking images. So when you're baking an image, you're taking a base image of something like Ubuntu, you're spinning it up, you're installing all of the software that you want to be using as part of your application on there, you spin it down, and you take a snapshot of that image. And then when you want to spin a new server up, you use the new image you've created, and rather than the 55 minutes, it should then spin up in a number of minutes. So when I had a bit of a look around, a few technologies to do this, things like, in terms of the scripting element, there's things like Ansible that you can use to kind of install stuff on a server, or there's things like Chef. A lot of config, it seems to be config, and then some scripts. Felt like there was a bit too much config with some of that, and then maybe Chef, I think it's a bit Ruby-ish. And so in the end, what I've done is I went with a technology called Packer. And so what Packer's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to create one of these golden images, and it's going to allow me to, and I'm actually going to show you the scripts, because I actually think, for me, you can read them, and they kind of make sense, okay? So I'm going to touch on that. Okay, so this is my Packer, and apologies if it's a little bit small. But with Packer, you do a couple of things. Firstly, you define a source. So what is the image that you want to take as your source image? And in this particular instance, I've said that I'd like to use a particular Ubuntu image. So in AWS, you specify NAMI ID. You can also get it to search for like the latest of a certain type of Ubuntu. I do that, but it's too big for the screen. The text will be tiny. So I've just tried to make it so it's a bit readable. So yeah, you specify the hard disk size, you specify the image, and what Packer's going to do is it's going to go to AWS, and it's going to ask to spin up an image of that particular type. You then specify one or more provisioners. So provisioners are just actions that Packer's going to do to that image, that server, to install your software. In this particular case, it's just scripts. I mean, you saw kind of the scripts I was doing earlier. Obviously, I do a few more things just to kind of keep things tied in, be quite functional. There's some kind of add-ons I mentioned earlier at the top of this that get installed. Okay. And you need to execute it. GitHub Actions. Really, really like it. Really quite simple. And what I've done in here, you'll see at the very, very top, you'll see on workflow dispatch, which effectively means when you click a button in GitHub, I don't know why it's workflow dispatch, or push. So if I ever push a change into the repo, it's actually going to kick off this build. There's 3 steps in here that I've minimized around setting up and doing inits, but the main command in here is just asking Packer to do a build. So when it does that, it'll go, it'll spin up that image, it'll install that software, it'll turn the machine down, and then into AWS, it'll push the snapshot. And I think it looks really quite, kind of nice. Also in GitHub Actions, I do a little thing at the bottom to notify me. So I'm sure there's a million ways of doing this, but I've just got a little thing in there that notifies me via Discord. Discord, if you don't know, is a chat client that gamers use quite a lot. It's a bit of a Slack or something like that kind of thing. It's really, really easy to do hooks into it. So in this particular instance, whether the build kind of fails or works, it's going to send a message through to my Discord channel. Excellent. So if you remember, I was really tired, lots of manual steps. I'm now happy because I can schedule this, it can run, and actually it's really, really easy to spin these servers up. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm not that happy because it's costing quite a lot of money. These servers, and we'll come on to this, these servers cost, I don't know, $70 a month to run, which I don't really want to be paying for. So, time to do a little segue into cost optimization of the servers. Again, slightly small. I'll try and say the numbers as I'm going through and kind of talk you through it. So, start off with a really tiny little burst CPU instance, T3.nano, about $4 a month to run, but actually ran out of resources, couldn't really handle the server, so it isn't quite usable for this particular use case. So I had to look at an M5 large. M5, relatively general use machine, 2 CPUs, 8 gig of memory. That's going to cost me $80 per month. Okay, I think we can do, it could run the server, but I think we can do a little bit better than that. So the C instances, so C5.large, it's a compute optimized instance. Again, will run really, really fine. 8 gig of memory is fine for some of these old games, and you get a slight reduction in cost, $72 a month. Okay, well, we're getting there, a little bit of a reduction. Okay, what next? So the A instances, so M5A or C5A, they're using the AMD chips rather than the Intel chips, tend to give you about 10% cost reduction. Brilliant, so we're starting to get a bit lower. And it'll run all the same software. $65, still quite a lot of money. Spot instances. So, spot instances are instances that you can use of AWS's where they've got spare capacity, and they have spare capacity quite a lot. The only thing is they can turn them off. They will give you a little bit of notice, not a huge amount of notice, but they can turn them off. So this is this balance with a hobby project. Either spending lots of money, or my friends are going to be upset and are going to trash me on Discord. So I'm probably going to go with a spot instance. I'm probably going to accept a little bit of trash talk now and again, for that kind of cost and money. And it's a really good reduction. Okay. The other thing with spots is you can actually see the frequency of interruption. So you can see how often it is that AWS take that capacity back off you. And interestingly, the C5 rather than the C5A, they don't take it back off you quite as often. So I kind of went with one of those instances. The next reduction, they don't play 24/7. Actually, both of these games, they tend to play about 6 hours a week. So as long as the server's only running for like 6 hours a week, then suddenly you've gone from $80 down to about 76 cents per week, which is awesome. So how do I do that? Event bridge schedules, really easy. Put an event bridge schedule in, put a little bit of Lambda code behind it to start and stop the instances. So at Friday night, it's going to get the server up and running for Counter-Strike at about 6:30, and then it'll shut it off just after midnight. Excellent. The only thing is, you pay for EBS. So that big disk image I talked about, the kind of 80 gig disk image, you pay for that even when the server isn't running. So even though I'm only paying 76 cents for the CPU and the kind of when it's running, I'm still paying $8 for the instance. So how do you fix that? Well, you go back to your schedule and how this all works, and actually absolutely terminate the instance at midnight on a Friday. So there isn't an instance there for anyone to use, and then at 6 p.m. on a Friday, you build the instance from scratch, or you build it from that golden image that I talked about earlier. Brilliant. So that's down to 24 cents. So we've kind of optimized all those pieces, you know. So here I was, very upset about the costs. Here I am, happy as Larry. Then I went on holiday. Okay. And the drivers wanted to play on a Tuesday night rather than on a Wednesday night. So I got a barrage of abuse on Discord because they wanted to do it. Fine, right, so what do we need to do next? Well, we need to get rid of the single point of contact. We need to get rid of Spock. So how do we do this? Because you can't have me going in and starting and stopping instances on a random night just because the guys want to play the racing game. And just to say, the racing game, because there's a really small hard disk, I just leave that one, you know, so it can be used any time during the week, unlike Counter-Strike with a big disk. Okay. I also, I don't trust my friends. I'm not going to give them an AWS key or an AWS login before anyone asks. It's you know, I'm really sorry, but it's my credit card that's on the thing. So it's not going to do that. Okay. So how do I want to do this, right? So we chat all the time on Discord. That's where we talk, you know, when we put all of our stuff. So actually, the best place for them to be able to do things is in Discord. So a Discord bot. So a Discord bot, and I'll come on to the kind of the architecture behind it in a second, but a Discord bot listens for people to put text into Discord and does stuff. You know, when we've used the likes of Slack and you can have bots with that, fine. So what you can do is you can put, you know, /servers, start up the driving server, and it'll start it up, and then if you remember, /stop, and it'll stop the driving. I do have an absolute thing at midnight every night that it turns all the servers off just in case they forget. They don't often, but they sometimes do. Don't trust my friends. Okay, in terms of an architecture point of view, and to talk about the AWS piece of it, obviously, there's only 6 of these requests a week. I don't want to be running it on any kind of tin, proper tin. So, okay, a little bit of serverless, a little bit of Lambda in here. So we've got a Discord client goes and talks to Discord. Discord then talks in through API gateway, through the Lambda function, and then it can control the instances start and stop. And my friends who I can give permissions in the Discord chat, they can then start and stop them. They don't have a key. It's kind of like the whole RBAC thing, the least privilege. They can't do anything other than type these commands into Discord, which is excellent, because I don't trust my friends. Obviously, a little bit of automation. If I change the code, GitHub Actions, it's going to go and it's going to update that Lambda function. Brilliant. So there I was. I was on holiday. They're really upset with the drivers. I'm still on holiday. The drivers are now happy. Excellent. There be dragons. Hobby projects, right? You know, if you're running it on some kind of disconnected PC at home, fine. But you're not. You're running it in the cloud. And the wonderful thing about the cloud is it's this big, expansible, scalable thing. And the really bad thing about the cloud from is it's this really big and expansive and scalable thing, you know. There's a real opportunity there in a couple of different ways for you to have problems. So, security. A couple of little hints and tips, nothing massively new on this page. I think it's one of only 2 pages with bullet points. I've really tried not to do bullet points, but it's security and it's boring and it's tedious, so the bullet points come out. So, interactive accounts with AWS. Make sure you've got strong passwords, don't share them with your friends, and enable multi-factor authentication. Any API accounts, really try and limit the scope of them if you can, and protect your API keys. Protecting your API keys is very important. I'm going to look over here for a minute. Protecting your API keys is very important. A friend of mine, might be in the audience, accidentally checked in an API key into GitHub, and when he woke up in the morning, Amazon got in touch with him about the £10,500 bill that people had racked up on his account. I'm not looking over there. Okay, it's important, people. Okay, the other thing that I do, and this is, just one of those things, but is I use AWS organizations to help me a little bit with security. And I don't have 1 million accounts, but I do just do a couple of little things that I think are quite good. So one of the things is that I've got a root account, and in the root account, I never ever issue any API keys. So I can never have any kind of API key takeover of that account, okay? That's where all the payment and the budgets and everything else get set, that kind of important stuff. I don't use it very often. I try to use it almost never. And then I also implement some service control policies, and I'll come back to that. And then I've got two other accounts. One is dev, which is where these servers run, and one is DNS. So I also use Route 53. That's kind of my prod. That's like really important to me. So I don't want to be using or touching that account very often. Extra accounts don't cost any more money, so it's kind of nice to have, multiple ones. It doesn't really matter, but it means that my API keys are only ever really from that dev account. And if the worst comes to worst, I won't want to, but I could press delete and then test out that I've actually checked everything into GitHub. Yeah, nice. So that's just a little hint and tip from me. The other one is, I mentioned service control policies. So they're one of those things, guardrails that you put in as a big organization. I really like this one. So again, a little bit small, but you can limit the type of instances that all of your accounts can spin up. So in here, I just list some smallish instances that any of the things inside my AWS accounts can spin up. And it really limits the amount of money that can be spent because actually it's the XXLLL, ones. It's kind of the American size instance types with tons of memory that could really rack up those bills. So this is one of the ways I use to limit. The other one is budget alerts. You kind of need to know if you're spending money whilst you're sleeping. They don't always phone you up in the morning. Maybe it's not quite as bad a hack. So again, really, really recommend you set yourself a budget alert. So I've got a budget alert that's going to send me, a message when I hit $10 across all of my accounts, in a month. Okay. 7th of September, 2023. I got a budget alert on the 7th of September. It's not even near the end of the month. And it's telling me that I've spent over $10 already this month. Sent me a Discord alert as well. Doesn't have to be an email, so you can send it via multiple channels, just so you don't ignore it. Could send you a text if you want. Sleuthing. So it's now time to do a bit of a whodunit. So as we go through the next few slides, have a little think in your heads. What's he done? What's he done wrong? Because he doesn't trust his friends. It can't be their fault. Okay. So the first thing I did, Cost Explorer. So you go into Cost Explorer and you have a little look. And this is the total cost per day. And I think we can work out which day the incident happened. And it's around about the end of August, 30th of August. Okay. And it's EC2 instances. Okay, so I've got a rogue EC2 instance. Brilliant. That's the data for the instance that was running. The important bit, I think, is this. The launch time was 4 p.m. on August 31st, and it's a spot instance. Okay. What was I doing? What was I doing on August 31st? I was hiking. Really, I was hiking at the time. I couldn't have done anything in the UI. So maybe I've left an API key around, maybe someone's kind of hacked into that. So where next? CloudTrail. So CloudTrail is the audit of all of the activity that's going on in your account. One thing I would say is that when you go into CloudTrail, there's an option that's like create a something, and it doesn't show you the data straight away. So when I was investigating this, I didn't think I had this turned on, but it is turned on by default. So it's a list of all of the activity that's going on in your account. So if we look around the time that this instance was created, there's not really a lot there. There's creating a log stream for this Conify thing. Well, that's me. That's another hobby project with my car. And then there's just this run instance. Okay, a little bit odd. Clicked in to get a bit more information. So user agent spot. So it's just generated me a spot instance. Okay. Spot requests. Went into the spot requests bit. I've got 62 spot requests. They're all disabled apart from this one that's active, but personally I think that's a little bit weird, but I've got this spot request. So go into the spot request that's active and that has spun this instance up, fine, lots of data, you can't really read it on the screen. 3 bits of information. One, it was created in 2021. Right? Okay, that's a little bit odd. IAM role, AC-GameStack. Right, Assetto Corsa. So it's one of the driving servers. So it isn't just like a random instance someone spun up. They're using my IAM role out of the CloudFormation stack. Maximum price 50 pence, or 5 cents, sorry. Okay. So let's go and have a little look at, so, kind of giving it away. The 50 pence seems small to me. I had to do a bit of a break glass fix about 6 months ago because some of the servers wouldn't start up because the spot instance price had actually gone over the 50-cent mark. So I went and looked at the cost over time for the last couple of months. And diagram, you kind of difficult to read that, zoomed in a little bit. And what this is it's the instance price over the 3 different availability zones within the London region. And when you go into 4 o'clock on August the 31st, the price had actually dropped below 5 cents. So effectively, this reservation had been sat there going, E below 5 cents, no. E below 5 cents, no. E below 5 cents, no. And at 4 o'clock on that particular day, it went below there, and it spun the instance up. I'm still not quite sure why it did it. The only thing I can think of is the fact that CloudFormation doesn't seem to remove those reservations when you terminate a CloudFormation stack. So I had 62 reservations in that list. Yes, they were marked as disabled, but it hadn't tidied those up. So I think it's that. But I can't really investigate anymore because it's a hobby project and I don't really have time. I want to do other things, like actually play some of these games. Anyway, so that was the sleuthing bit. So that's the talk. So we've been a bit of a story, a bit of an adventure. We talked about shooting and driving. We talked about baking, we talked about hiking, we talked about sleuthing. Please check out the Liverpool AWS user group. We're a friendly little bunch. And that's me. Thank you very much.